Hey guys, Darren Kelly, Coach of Wise Pods, and welcome back to another Captain's episode heading into round 19, where we have a pretty interesting round of football ahead of us, with obviously a lot of carnage that we've had to endure over the last 7 days, and it may not be over with what we can expect to come through tonight with team announcements, but also throughout the weekend if more injuries pop up. But for captains this week, it's going to be a little bit trickier with just probably a bit of a thinner sort of top end guys, just with obviously the fact that West Coast and Richmond are playing with each other. So it automatically knocks out, 4 or 5 different options that we particularly normally have each and every other round, because those two are really good matchups for a lot of our big midfielders or even ruckman as such. So it's a little bit disappointing there, but let's get straight into big options this week. So I think we all know who number one is. It's the man that I've been speaking about all week, pretty much, and that is Brodie Grundy. Obviously, with Tristan Cherry's ban being upheld for 3 weeks, Brodie Grundy is now coming up against a ruckless North Melbourne, or at most it's going to be a Brendan Teakle, who we've known from the past is not particularly a tough ruckman to go against. So Brodie Grundy, with his form in the last sort of 8 or 9, 10 weeks, has been elite. Plus this matchup, he should have a massive game. He is a very viable VC or C option, depending on how you want to play it. He does play early enough on the Saturday to be able to do the VC option if you want to take a stab in the dark and just look at what his ceiling could be and then roll into a safer option. Or you could even go a VC on a bit more of a risky play early on in the weekend, so maybe tonight or even Friday, and then roll into a very safe Brodie Grundy captaincy on Saturday. So I think he's by far the best option. There's really no data behind it because obviously he's coming up against a matchup that we haven't seen for a long, long time, and obviously he's never played against Brendan Teakle before. So there's no data really behind it. He scored an 83 against Tristan Cherry earlier on in the year. That was obviously before he sort of came up to this really good form he's been showing, and obviously the matchup's much harder with Tristan Cherry in there. So for all the good reasons, it has to be number one, just because the ceiling is so huge that we don't know what it could be. But he seems like he should be a pretty safe 110, as what he's been shown for the last 10 weeks, as I said. But he could also go up to a 150, if not even bigger than that. Who knows? It could be that big. So I really like Brodie Grundy at number one, and he will be part of my captaincy plan wherever I look. So that's why I've been making it a pretty big priority to get him in, because he's going to be massive this week. Number two, I have gone with the likes of Locky Whitfield. Again, another huge, big priority. If you can get him in this week, that would be great. But obviously, with all the carnage, it's not always possible because he's a defender and a lot of playing with forwards and rucks this week. But he's up against Essendon this weekend. That is the second best matchup for designated kick-out players, which Locky Whitfield is the king at. So he should have another pretty big game. He went 120 against can't remember who he versed last week, but he had a really good match. So he returned from injury pretty quickly, and he's just back in form. So he should have a pretty big game. Should be a pretty safe 120, if not going 140. So he's a viable VC option tonight if you just want to have a bit of stab in the dark. Hopefully hits a big ceiling. And then if you're not super confident going into a Brodie Grundy, or you don't have Brodie Grundy, then you can easily go with him. So I'll definitely be looking at him as a very viable option. He did, however, only score the 77 against Essendon last year, so doesn't have the greatest history against them. But I think the Essendon we are playing tonight, and then what we've seen in the past, are two completely different sides. Obviously, with all the injury concerns that they have at the stage, they are just a completely different side. So I wouldn't be worrying about that too much. We have seen some pretty big scores from a lot of different big name players across the competition against Essendon this year. So I think Locky Whitfield can be a part of that tonight. So a very good VC option tonight. Number three, I have gone with the most selected player, and that is Jordan Dawson. He does have the second best matchup for midfielders at this point, and that is Gold Coast Suns. Again, we've seen some pretty big scores against them. Zach Merritt only a couple weekends ago with 145. They just don't seem to care about tagging. Even last week when they played against Dacos, they gave him no attention. It was just more of an injury concern that really stopped him scoring quite well. So I think Jordan Dawson can go massive in this game. It could be a 140. just for those all factors that, he's a tackling machine. He can mark around the ground. He gets plenty of disposals, even hits the scoreboard. So I think he can go quite well as long as he's locked in and playing. So yeah, and I think the other factor is that Adelaide are going to be searching for a bit of blood here because they got ripped off last time against uh, Gold Coast Suns early in the year when they played in Gold Coast at People's First Stadium. Now it's at their home. They're going to be coming with a bit of heat, so I think they're going to lead from Jordan Dawson is going to lead from the front, being the captain, and he's going to go pretty big. So he seems like a very safe C option. Last game of the round on Sunday. So yeah, he's a very viable option. He went 118 against them earlier in the year as well. So even shows you that he has some pretty good scores against them not too long ago. He also averages 107 against Gold Coast in his career across 9 games. So he loves playing against them. It's not his best matchup in his career, but definitely I think it's number 2 for his career. So he does like playing them. So he is a very viable option. And again, we've seen some really big scores against Gold Coast throughout this year. They've been one of the easiest matchups all year. So definitely one to watch there. Number 3 is Brodie Grundy's teammate in Errol Goulden. For all the sort of reasons that I wanted to target him this week and why I still think he's a huge option. He loves these sort of matchups. North are the easiest matchup for midfielders at this stage. Yes, Errol Goulden isn't the pure sense of a inside mid, but he just gets around the ground so easily with his aerobic capacity that he just finds the pill wherever he goes and surprisingly gets a lot of tackles as well. So he should have a very good game. He also went 151 against North Melbourne last year, so he obviously has a really good history against them in recent history. So I think he can go really well this weekend. If you didn't have a Brodie Grundy, you could easily throw the VC on him. Looking for that ceiling, probably it's tough call because the C. I don't know how you guys would feel about it, but the C option in Errol Goulden could be a bit risky just because he does play on the wing a lot, so he can be away from the peel a lot of the time when he's not around the ball and hunting it. He can get caught out on the cold wing a fair bit, so I'd probably feel a little bit safer as a VC option rather than a C option. That's just my opinion. You guys may have a different opinion in that. But in my personal opinion, I'm not trusting that with a C. If I was an owner, I'd rather go with the VC, looking for that massive ceiling that we know he has, and then going in with a safe captaincy option later on down the line. So that's just how I feel about that one. So yeah, number 4 has to be Old Golden. Again, all have the capacity to go massive. And then I've got Lockie Whitfield's teammate here in Locky Ash. Very safe, sort of 100, 110, 120 sort of player all year. He's been a very viable person, all year, like I said. Only scored the 85 last year when they played them. That's the last time they played him. So that was even before Locky Ash was sort of this big top 6 defender that we're seeing this year. So he does have a decent scoring history against them. And for the same reasons, as I said, for Lockie Whitfield. Second best matchup for designated kick-out players. And we know GWS can and will chip around the ball a fair bit if they know the game's in hand and they just want to take it a bit easier. We are expecting GWS to win this game tonight by a fair margin, so they could just start to chip it around a fair bit, particularly in the fourth quarter. I wouldn't be surprised if we see 2 50-point quarters from Locky Whitfield and Ash tonight in the fourth quarter. So stay tuned for that. But that's my top 5 at this stage, so hopefully you've got a fair few of them. I unfortunately only have 2 of them, so not expecting the best round for myself. But I will just continue on with my next 5, just in case you don't have too many of those players. I have Zach Butters at number 6 against Hawthorn. Hawthorn actually have been giving up a lot of easier big scores against some of the big names. So, Nick Dacos went 128, Noah Anderson 116, Lockie Neal 120, Matt Kennedy 132. Even recently, Andy Brayshaw went 138, and even Jack Steele and Jack McRae went 130s. So just in the recent weeks, they've been giving up plenty of 130 scores. So I'm pretty bullish on what Zach Butters could do. And if Port are any chance of beating Hawthorn this weekend, Zach Butters is going to be the man to stand up because he's one of the only man standing left in that side. So I think he can put up a very decent score and was one of the reasons why I brought him in, last weekend. So I think is a viable option if you want to go there as a decent I think he plays early enough that he could do the VC. I think he plays the third game of the round, Saturday afternoon. So yeah, probably a decent VC option if you wanted to go there. Number 7, I have got Bailey Smith for all the reasons that he seems like a very safe captaincy, even against the GWS last weekend where he copped a little bit of attention. He still put up a very solid 98. So he's up against St Kilda this weekend. The only flag and the reason why he's a little bit lower on my list is the fact that he obviously has St Kilda, and that comes with a lot of risks with tags and whatnot. So he could be tagged by a Windhager. Haven't had confirmation of that yet. Who knows what's going to happen? They haven't really been using Windhager to tag a huge amount recently, but I would not be surprised if they deploy that quite quickly this weekend, because Bailey Smith has been one of the best players in the competition this year. So if they used it on Bont, I'd be very surprised if they don't use it on a Bailey Smith this weekend. So I'd probably stay clear of that one if you can, but like I said, he's still a very safe option. Number 8, I've gone with the likes of Max Gawn. He's got a tougher matchup against Pitnet and Tom de Koning, but he put up a 109 against them last year, so doesn't mind the matchup at all. And I just feel like he's due for one of these big games where he just goes absolutely massive. He's obviously had 3 tougher matchups in the last 3 weeks. We know how good Max Gawn is. He doesn't really care too much. He's one of the best ruckmen in the competition. He's due to have a big score, so I could easily see him having a decent 120 in this game and just tries to carry his side to victory, because it is against Colton, and obviously Colton are not travelling as good as they should be at this stage. So I wouldn't be surprised if he can spill a bit of blood in the water and really try and get his side across the line. So I think he's a very viable option, and if you're bringing him in, you should be pretty confident that he will go well enough. Number 9, I have gone with Marcus Bontempelli. Off the back of 166, it's hard not to back the man in again. Obviously, with how good he looked last weekend, even in a tougher matchup. He does have another tough matchup again this weekend against the Brisbane Lions. But just looking at how he was moving around the ground, getting plenty of touches, demanding the ball, getting the ball everywhere on the ground, and how well he used it, he looked like he was finally the Bont of old, where he was just moving freely with his body. So I back him in to be another very good option. Could even VC him if he plays early enough. I think he plays on the Friday night. So, yeah, you probably could go there if you wanted to. If you don't have any other guys I have listed above, definitely worth a VC option if you wanted to go there instead. I think he could get it done. The only slight flag is that, a Josh Dunkley could spend a bit of time with him just at stoppages, just to stop his movements a fair bit. But, again, it won't be a hard tag. It'll be like a defensive midfield type work, so it should be okay. And then to round out my top 10, I have just gone with the likes of Tom Green. Again, Essendon matchup, very good for midfielders. They are the 4th easiest matchup for midfielders so far this year, or in the last 10. So again, he should go quite well. But the fact of the matter is that Tom Green has been super inconsistent, so he really hits these 70s, but also hits these 120s. So I could see this round being the one that he hits a 120 for us. So if you wanted to go there with a bit of a VC tonight, maybe you don't have a Locky Whitfield or an Ash, you could just go with the VC on Tom Green tonight, hoping for a big ceiling score. But I don't know if he's got that big enough ceiling to hit that 140, 150 that we're probably searching for with our VC options this time of year. So realistically, you want to be trying to hit those massive ceiling scores and rolling into a pretty safe captain option at the end of the day. So that's just where my captaincies and my thought process around my captains are this time of year anyways. So that's my top 10. I guess the guys that I missed out on, Nasai, he's pretty highly selected. I just worry about a Mullen tag. Obviously, Nasai has been spoken about as being the next McLeod and all this sort of type of hype in the media. I would not be surprised if Geelong just go, I'm going to shut this shit down. Mullen, go to him, stop him at all costs. So I'm a little bit concerned with that. So I've just avoided him into my top 10 at all stages at this stage. Nick Daicos, just with that ankle injury, is just a bit of concern for me. Also against Fremantle, we saw Wagner go against him earlier on in the year, so I think that could happen again. Wagner is playing a fair bit of midfield time at this stage, so yeah, I've quite a big concern for Daicos this weekend. Tobin and Curvis against the West Coast matchup. again, should go massive, but just looking at his form in these last sort of 5, he hasn't really been the tank that we sort of expect him to be, where he's had these massive ceilings, even in nice matchups. He just hasn't been there. So just avoiding that one. Andrew Brayshaw off a 138. Probably should be included in my top 10, but has Collingwood. So I think that's a really tough matchup. They've been one of the toughest matchups all year. So I'm just not going there, unfortunately. Noah Anderson, he's had a pretty solid month. Again, probably could be due for a top 10 in my captains. Hasn't really featured too highly in my captains at all. But if he can produce anything like Marcus Bontempelli did in the last weekend's matchup, then he should have another decent one. But yeah, I feel like because Adelaide are a very tough matchup, not expecting it to go that way. And then that's probably about it. Royal Marshall could also have a very good matchup if the likes of Heath is not named. Obviously, I don't know that if that is true or not yet. But if that was the case and Heath was dropped and they don't bring in any other ruckman, Marshall could skyrocket into my top 5 with the nice matchup. I think Geelong are one of the best matchups for ruckman specifically. So stay tuned for that one. But yeah, that's probably about it for the captains this weekend, realistically. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this episode. Just quick capping what I'm doing. I'm going Brodie Grundy into Jordan Dawson this weekend. I'm pretty confident on that. And just a bit of a reminder of my trades. Still hasn't changed. I'm still pretty confident I'm going with this unless something at team selection gets thrown up. I will try and keep you guys updated if anything does change. I'll do my best. But also just a bit of a reminder for looping options. Obviously with a few teams playing Thursday and Friday night, you've got the likes of Clark and Johnson, but also you've got the likes of Archer May playing as well. So if they, put up a decent score tonight, then you could play a bit of adjust your trades a little bit. Just say Archer May puts up a nice solid 70 or 80. You could even look to bring in or use your red dot this weekend to cover that F6 spot and, save your trade. Well, not save your trade, but use your trade in a different way that you can take Archer May's score this weekend and then save a bit of cash this week to then be able to attack again next week with a bit of money in hand. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at how the weekend's going to plan out for you, because you could try and get a little bit of a leg up as the weekend progresses. So that's what I'll be trying to do. I'll have Johnson as my emergency tonight. Hopefully he can go well. Is not the sub, and then if he puts up a decent enough score, then hopefully I can maybe sub him on for maybe a Ned Long or something like that, and move elsewhere. So just got to try and stay on your toes at all points to try and maximize your score. So. But that's about it for me, guys. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed, and I'll hopefully have a great weekend. I will see you guys for team review Monday. Cheers, guys.
All the pain.